Today we'd like to show you injector rebuilding on our Ford tractor. Now this is a 62 to 64 specifically. We could not find injectors for it, so we actually had to do injector tips, so they had to be rebuilt. So I did not film pulling the hood off or the fuel tank, but I'm going to show you here from the start. These are our injector lines. We're going to pull those loose first. We're going to get the valve cover off of it. And I've heard that you can do this without actually pulling the fuel tank off of it, but for the video and ease of getting this stuff apart, I decided to pull it off of there. It wasn't too bad to get out. Now on this model, the injectors are actually under the valve cover, and they have this rail that runs across at the bottom of the injectors right here. And this is the return for the fuel from the injectors. So we're going to be taking these bolts off the top of this rail, and there's also a fitting that goes down here where the fuel comes out the side of the block and returns back to the tank. So we're going to be taking all these fittings loose to remove this first. Now as you do this, you have to be very, very careful, because underneath these bolts here, there's actually a brass washer. And I'll show you here in a second what it looks like. But there's a brass washer under the bolt head and also underneath the fuel return rail itself. And do not lose these. These are extremely difficult to find. They're a specific size for that bolt, and the bolt is a specific bolt to go in that as a banjo fitting. So we're going to use a 1/2 inch here. We actually have to use a swivel head to get down in between the push rod to get down to remove the bolts for the injector. So the bolts are down in on either side, and we'll pull those out of there. And then on the front of the injector where it connects to the line, there's actually a rubber seal that will slide up with the injector. I've already gotten a few of them out of here. This is the last one to pull, but I will show you here. So we actually had to use a socket and actually take the rocker arm brace off the top of this, like loosen it up at least, so it relieved pressure on these rocker arms and push rods, because we're going to have to move the push rod to the side to get that injector up between them. I tried to get it without doing it that way, but if you take a flathead screwdriver and slide it underneath the injector in the back and give a little bit of a twist, it'll actually start popping the injector up out of there, and you can just kind of work it real gently to get it out there. Don't pry real hard on the head, or you could damage something here. Underneath the injector there is actually a copper seal, and most of the time it sticks to the injector and comes out with it. I got lucky on mine and they all came out with them. Sometimes you have to dig them out of the head to get them out. You can see the washer there at the bottom. But the tips were extremely corroded. They had a lot of carbon on them. And so I took two 5/16 bolts and clamped them into the vise, so I can drop the injector down onto those, so I can actually release the cap that holds the injector tip off of it. Now, this will keep from damaging the injector itself. You don't want to put the injector right into the vise, or you could damage the end of it. So once we pull this cap off of here, we can remove the injector tip. These injector tips are available from a lot of different sources. I think we paid about $30 per tip for ours to put them back together. The only reason I did the tips on these is because the full injector was not available, so we had to rebuild these. When you go to reassemble the tip onto it, there are two indexing pins that align the tip to the body of the injector, Now these have to be assembled in diesel fuel. So you have to submerge them in diesel fuel before you can assemble this. So it's going to be a little hard to see here, but I'm going to try to align these two pins on the injector tip while it is under the diesel. And once you get the injector tip aligned, then you have to put the retaining collar back over top of it and at least screw it on by hand before you can remove it from the submerged position. Now many people will say that you actually need to put these on a injection tester stand in order to test the pattern on them. I do not have one of those. They're about $100. I'm going to take my chances on this and see if these are going to work for us without having to do that. I'm not adjusting the pressure on these at all because there's actually a bolt at the other end of the injector, so I'm not going to touch that at all. But hopefully the spray pattern on these is nice. I won't know until I fire the tractor up to see what it's going to do. So once I tighten up the top of this injector is rebuilt. I just have to repeat this for the other three. So that's pretty much it. Stay tuned for our second video, which will show reassembling these injectors into the tractor and testing it out.